Hello and welcome to our ninth and final session of our Recentering the ELA-ELD Framework webinar series. Today, we will focus on system implementation, and we will get to discuss with you the California Literacy Roadmap. Thank you so much for being with us here today. We know you have a lot going on in your day, and we appreciate the time that you're giving to this special session today. As you see here, we've had 9 sessions, today being our 9th. So we encourage you to go into our California Literacy webpage if you would like the videos, the materials, which are the slides, the guidance documents for each one of these different sessions. Before we move on, I would like to do a quick poll to see who is with us today. And let me just grab that. We would like to know, and I'm going to try to get at 80%, if you're a classroom teacher or paraprofessional, librarian or a specialist, family, community member, if you're a coach, an administrator, if you work at a county office, in higher education or an educational organization, CDE or other state agency, if you're a policymaker or other. So we're almost at 80%. I'm going to wait a little bit longer. This is great. We have a lot of administrators here today. Thank you for being with us. Teachers, paraprofessionals, after a long day, thank you for being with us. And I'm going to end this poll. One more second. Right. Share the results. As you see, 22% classroom teachers, paraprofessionals, 29% administrators, 12% higher ed, 16% instructional coaches, and everyone else who's here today, there are no 0%. Thank you again for being with us. As we move forward, I'd like to share what we're going to be going over today. So we'll do our welcome and our opening remarks. And then we're going to dive into what is a comprehensive implementation system? What is the guidance from the ELA-ELD framework? And what are some newer resources? And then we'll jump into what does the literacy roadmap have to offer? And then we'll close out and do next steps. Our outcomes for today are that you walk away with the big ideas of system implementation in the framework. And you're able to identify sections within our ELA-ELD framework and other key resources that strengthen implementation systems in TK through 12, as well as identify newer resources to support system improvement and increase student outcomes, and become familiar with the California Literacy Roadmap, which we're super excited to talk about today. As we move through the presentation today, we ask that you consider these questions. What is resonating with you? What do you want to remember? What are some key points for you or for anyone that you work with? And or what might be some questions you have? And in a bit, I will share a Padlet with you where you can write these questions and where we can discuss them a little later on when there's going to be some opportunities to do some sharing and some looking at these responses. With us today are the webinar series developers, Dr. Hallie Yap, Dr. Pam Spiescher, Director Nancy Brennelson, and myself, Bonnie Garcia. So we're going to begin with what is a comprehensive implementation system? Nancy, can you walk us through what framework guidance is?
Thank you, Bonnie, and good afternoon to all of our participants. We're glad that you're here today in our last session. So we have to think about putting together all of the guidance that's in the framework to benefit students and in organizing the entire educational enterprise. We look first to the framework and remembering that although today we'll be focusing more on Chapter 11, which is about implementing the English Language Arts English Language Development Framework and Programming, but center ourselves on this conceptual model for comprehensive and integrated literacy that is woven throughout the framework, where all students are achieving standards, that multilingual students are achieving the ELD standards in a situation, in a context that is motivating, engaging, challenging, respectful, integrated, and where students learn all of these themes. So today, with implementation, we are looking at all 5 themes in an integrated system with the aim of having all students achieve those goals in the outer ring of this graphic. So what does the framework say? As Bonnie already told you, we're going to start with the framework and the advice that it gives. And these are some tips or some guidance provided in Chapter 11. That's page 973. That list is divided into 2 parts. System-wide elements is the first. So clearly, it's what you would expect: curriculum and instruction, instructional materials, assessment systems and tools, school calendars and schedules, intervention strategies and programs, staffing, everyone from the classroom teacher, specialists, paraprofessionals, librarians, coaches. Time, space, and technology for professional learning and collaboration, because none of this can be done without school personnel working together. Professional learning programs, collaborative structures, data systems to monitor student academic and linguistic progress over time, fiscal and human resources. So that was the advice that we offered in Chapter 11. We went on to say that there's professional knowledge and skills that all educators need to possess in order to implement this fully. Content, information about standards, the framework, literature, literacy, linguistics, ELD, foundational skills, cultural and linguistic diversity, and we can go on. Pedagogy, how we make it happen. What does it look like in action? Equitable participation, direct instruction, collaborative learning. Dispositions, our attitudes towards change, towards students, toward professional learning and planning, making sure we have high enough expectations. And continuing on with this list, we have planning, all those things that need to come together to ensure that all students learn everything they need. Assessment, all the purposes and types. Leadership, and a major emphasis in the framework is on shared leadership and responsibility. Communication, how you organize it, facilitate it, and collaboration. When we first developed all of this, we recommended that schools and districts take stock of where they were relative to each of these points. And the same advice goes today. Of course, in a moment, we'll see some newer resources because we've come a long way since 2014. Here's a figure from Chapter 11 that we still think would be useful for you to consider as you think about the knowledge and skills and dispositions that people in your schools or in your school districts or county offices of education may have. It's organized essentially by the chapters in the framework and those topics, the pieces of content that are addressed and that should be considered as you plan professional learning programs. One of the key points we talk about in the framework is the value of teachers working together and communities of practice. We have a list here on page 984 of some of the key things that teachers do as they work together. They reflect on their practice. They form social and professional bonds, which are really critical to having an efficacious and satisfying work environment and experience. Develop shared understandings and work to refine effective practices. We're always improving. And collaborate on problems of practice using evidence such as student work and other assessment data. The notion that we put forward is that we need to view teaching from a critical stance and confront challenging topics and engage in difficult conversations as needed. Provide one another mutual support and accountability, learning to constructively deal with conflict. Yes, we left out a word there. And focus on system and personal improvement to achieve student outcomes. All of this advice holds true today and is important. We offered some additional examples of ways in which schools can organize professional learning. These snapshots, as you've seen throughout this series, snapshots in all of our chapters, 11.1 is a snapshot of a year-long professional learning program at a school site. Snapshot 11.2 is an example of a multi-year comprehensive professional learning program. So we suggest that you take a look at these snapshots for some ideas about what you may have already done or still would like to do. Figure 11.6 is really a set of questions to do a quick inventory of where you are in terms of assessment tools and uses of assessment. It refers you back to chapter 8. And in fact, we need to remember that the entire framework is a blueprint for the implementation of standards. So not only are we needing to consult chapter 11, but chapter 8 for assessment, chapter 9 for issues of equity, chapter 10 for issues related to 21st century learning and technology, et cetera, et cetera. This particular quick assessment is useful, and today even more so. One area that is important to monitor is the progress of students who are identified as English learners in terms of their proficiency in English, or ELD. We do have figure 11.7, which lays out a process for that at the district, school, and individual teacher level. We suggest you take a look at as well. And lastly, the chapter ends with a section on program supports. None of this can happen without the support of every piece of this structure. And it includes specialists and other staff, libraries and teacher librarians, expanded learning programs, what happens before school and after school, parents and families, and partnerships with communities, with institutions of higher education. So we suggest that you take a look at the pages 994 through 1002 for some suggestions about that. Now, some of this has been, all of which I've just gone over, has been updated, which in our next segment will offer you some additional resources that you may want to consider. But now we're going to just take a moment to reflect on that quick review of what was in chapter 11. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Pam, for our first pause and reflect.
Thank you, Nancy. And I'm just popping in for a moment to give Nancy a little breather and to offer you an opportunity to process. I know this is a lot of information, and it can feel like drinking from a fire hose at some point. So we want to just give you these moments to just think about what are you connecting with? What is familiar? What questions do you have? What do you think everybody should know about? I know that I was watching when I was listening to Nancy, I was reminded of some of the snapshots and figures that I sometimes forget about that I am thinking about including in an institute that I'm planning for June. So thank you. Thank you, Nancy. So I'm just going to give you a brief moment to go into the Padlet. It is going to be brief because we have a lot of information, but the Padlet will be open. So we encourage you to add your comments and your questions continuously because we do read all of your comments, everything you post. So I'll be quiet for just a moment to let you post your comments, and then Nancy will come in and continue.
Thank you, Pam. I'm practicing wait time to give encouragement to everyone to post a reflection or a comment regarding some of what we've just seen. Continue to do that. Going to share some new resources with you. All right, moving on. Still dealing with a question of what is a comprehensive implementation system and some newer resources to consider. Yes, indeed, the framework was written back and adopted by the State Board in 2014. So the Department of Education and the entire field of education has been very busy since. And there's some wonderful resources out there, many of which you are familiar with. Start with the California Comprehensive State Literacy Plan. This was done in conjunction with the Comprehensive Literacy State Development Grant and adopted by the board in 2021. There was a local literacy planning toolkit that was developed in conjunction with this comprehensive plan. The exciting news is that we have the opportunity to apply for another year of CLSD funding or another whole 5 years of funding through the federal government. And so whereas this particular grant that we have now, we've asked for an extension of a year, but we're also going to be busy looking at applying for a new grant, and that would entail updating the Comprehensive State Literacy Plan. We've given you the links here, but in the guidance document that you'll receive in a few moments, all of these are listed with their links. The whole field of improvement science in connection with planning, it has exploded in the last few years, and all of you know that. And one of the biggest promoters of improvement science and ways to ensure that we really look closely at what it is that we plan, do, study once we've done it, and then act on the results is the Carnegie Foundation. So this probably looks familiar to you, but in the guidance document and linked here are various pieces from their website that you may want to consider as you think about your own improvement processes in your school districts. We have support for that as well. And in fact, through our statewide system of support and our system of leads, we have system improvement leads for improvement science. So you see here that they specialize in data literacy, high leverage practices, continuous improvement, and technical support. We encourage you, and they have encouraged us to encourage you to reach out to them. They are affiliated with special education local planning areas, but they are open to working with school districts across the state, particularly in this area of improvement science. And many of the grants that are operating in the state are using these same techniques. Literacy Coaches and Reading Specialist Educator Training Grant, or LCR SET, as it's become known, has an entire process that the schools participating in that project have been undergoing this year for site planning. And the good news about this is that even if you are not one of the schools or a district with one of the schools identified for funding for literacy coaches, you still have access to all of these materials for planning, which take you step by step through a process to understand what literacy components are, what your current practices are, what current student outcomes are, and the materials you're using, etc. Working through an entire reflection process, ultimately ending in a plan. So you see here the first page of a template, developing SMART goals, analyzing across a number of domains, conditions for success, assessment, curriculum, etc. The Padlet that is linked here has all of the sessions, the webinars that have been conducted with the schools with the coaching funding and a step-by-step process, whereas they're not able to extend to you the coaching and the actual technical support for these processes. All of the materials that they've developed are available to anyone in California. We have other tools as well. Just in March, just a couple of months ago, the Curriculum Frameworks and Instructional Resources Division updated their guidance for local instructional materials adoptions. And so that is a great resource. And it cuts across all content areas, not just literacy. But there are many, what I would call oldies but goodies, from the California Superintendent's Group. There is the Adoption Toolkit that came out in 2015 with our latest adoption, and a selection of non-adopted materials that are aligned with standards and guidance for that was issued in 2016. And there's more. Immediately on the heels of the publication of the framework, CDE and the state board approved quality professional learning standards for California. The document is linked here, and then a professional learning system review document that can be used to really take stock of what you're doing in the way of comprehensive professional learning planning. There are a number of resources beyond these two that are connected and are available on the CDE website, and those are listed in the CDE guidance document that you'll receive in just a couple of minutes. The group called Learning Forward, you're probably familiar with them, also has issued over the years standards for professional learning, and they revised their standards just in 2022. So this link takes you to their new standards and support structures. Moving on then to parent, family, and community engagement. There is an initiative, the Community Engagement Initiative, related to the statewide system of support that has a number of resources and ways to engage family and communities. Many of these are linked on the CDE webpage for this purpose, and in conjunction with the local control accountability plan and the whole process that districts go through to develop that plan. And so we would encourage you to look at those materials. And last but not least, because who hasn't been hearing about artificial intelligence these days? The whole issue of educational technology is at the forefront. A couple of years ago, the department, in conjunction with the State Board of Education and the Sacramento County Office of Education, issued guidance on digital learning integration and standards guidance. We have often highlighted section C of that document because it has guidance related to standards for ELA literacy and ELD and practices. But you should not overlook section A, which is implementing research-based digital learning practices. I think you would find it illuminating in terms of all the resources that are available. So this dates back to 2021. Artificial intelligence, getting back to that topic, is at the forefront. There is a task force working on this, and a resource kit was issued just a few months ago in September of 2023, Learning with AI and Learning about AI. This is a brief document that offers you resources. So this was a whirlwind trip through all the work that's been taking place, or at least a sampling of the work that's been taking place in some of the areas that are addressed in Chapter 11 of the framework and across the framework. So we wanted to give you an opportunity now to take a look at some of this on your own. And I'm going to invite my colleague, Hallie Yop, to do this with you. Thank you, Hallie.
Thank you, Nancy, and greetings to everyone who has joined us this afternoon. Very nice to have you here. Nancy did go through a lot of information, starting with looking at what the framework offers, and then what has been contributed to the field subsequent to the adoption of that framework. So, Bonnie, would you mind sharing your screen and showing the Google, the document, the guidance document that we have made available? So you should get the link in your chat in just a moment, but here is on the first page, if you wouldn't mind scrolling down, some of the points that are most closely relevant to this topic. So you'll see there are certain chapters really call out parts of the content that we've been discussing. You can go to those links, just scroll around a bit, look at the bottom of page 1. Sorry, Bonnie, go back. We've actually explicitly called out some of those items that Nancy was mentioning on her slides. Now, please move on, Bonnie. And here are those newer resources written subsequent to this, the adoption of the framework. Most of them are published by the Department of Education or some other California. They're very California relevant and specific, with some that are beyond that. Again, you may have found the commentary about AI interesting and want to go down and see what follow the link to that document and so forth. So you'll see all of those here that Nancy just mentioned. If we scroll a little further on page 4, we always provide links to the previous guidance documents. So if you want to look at what we talked about in Foundational Skills and Webinar 2, you have access to all of those documents, not only on the literacy website that Bonnie mentioned earlier, but right here. And then down a bit further, there are 2 more pages that just have a lot of additional literacy-related links. Again, starting from the framework, you'll see there are links that take you to all the snapshots, links that take you to all the vignettes, and so forth. So our goal right now is to give you a few moments to look at this document, to possibly just to see what's there, but also to possibly dive into some of those links. And then we're hoping that you will post things on the Padlet that perhaps you found interesting, you want to call others' attention to, respond to others' posts, and you've got about 5 or 6 minutes to take some time to explore. When we come back, we'll be talking about the California Literacy Roadmap.
Okay. I am going to move on to the next section, but I encourage you to continue to write in your reflections in the Padlet. And if you are looking through that guidance document, continue to look through it as I go through the next part of our presentation today. So thank you, Nancy, for sharing how system implementation and improvement are pivotal to refining our educational practices and ultimately improving student outcomes. So today I get the opportunity to address a very important question, which is, what will the California Literacy Roadmap offer? So the California Literacy Roadmap is intended to support instruction and those system practices that Nancy referred to earlier. Nancy referred to the critical elements that are needed for system implementation, which included instruction, materials, assessment systems and tools, schedules, interventions, professional learning, professional knowledge and skills, including planning, assessments, leadership, collaboration, critical content knowledge for professional learning, integrating California literacy policy and guidance, including the framework, our standards, universal design for learning, multi-tiered systems of support, understanding and utilizing our students' assets and needs to inform and drive our instruction, using evaluations and assessments to both look at how are students performing, as well as how are our teaching practices doing and are they effective? And what you'll notice is that in legislation for the literacy roadmap, these critical elements, professional knowledge and skills, and content knowledge for professional learning are included, as it requires the inclusion of models of effective practice that incorporate the 5 themes of the framework, which are including meaning making, language development, effective expression, content knowledge, foundational skills in no particular order, and that the roadmap described to local educators, administrators, schools, districts, their governing boards, how do we use this framework along with other existing resources to offer instruction that is evidence-based in the classroom and instruction that is explicit in phonics, phonemic awareness, and other decoding skills, as well as the development of vocabulary, comprehension, writing, and listening skills. Legislation also requires that the roadmap provide direction that is practical for instruction and intervention. So direction that is going to be able to be used by our educators, that is in alignment with state adopted standards for all students and across content areas. And for all students, I mean students who are English learners, students with disabilities, students who are struggling to read, early learners, etc. And in performing this work, we, CDE, are in constant consultation with the State Board of Education, soliciting input of literacy experts and practitioners in the development of our literacy roadmap. And stay tuned, I'm gonna point to a place where you can be a part of that input if you are interested. The literacy roadmap is being led the development by the Department of Education, but we have a team of educational partners, of experts and practitioners. And in our team, we are working and contracting with Sacramento County Office of Ed, San Bernardino County Superintendent of School, and West Ed Region 15 Comprehensive Center. Our educational partners include State Board of Education, the CISC ELA-ELD Subcommittee, statewide literacy, language, and grant leads, as well as the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence. So we are constantly working with our team and with our educational partners as we develop the elements of the framework, which I'll get into in a second. The plan for this roadmap comes in 3 phases. The first phase having begun this year, with phase 1 starting with the ELA ELD framework webinar series, this very series that we're on today, this being the last one. And moving into the development of the English medium, kindergarten, and first grade content block, we're holding roundtables to solicit that expert and practitioner input. And in a bit, I'm going to talk about how we're going to do that in phase 2. And that's where, if you're interested, I'm going to suggest that you email both Nancy and I. Let us know that you'd like to attend, and we will put you on a list so we can invite you to future events. At the very end of this year, towards the end of June, our plan is to release the content blocks for English medium grades or kindergarten and grade 1. As we move into phase 2, we plan to develop English medium content blocks for the 2nd through 5th grade and multilingual content blocks for grades K through 5. I'll get into what is in these content blocks in a second. Again, we're going to hold those roundtables, which we hope that you will be a part of, and to gather input as we develop these guiding documents, with a plan to release first the grades 2 through 5 English medium literacy content blocks, and then the grades K through 5 multilingual literacy blocks, followed by sample K through 5 English medium and multilingual daily and weekly schedules, along with guidance and resources for families, assessments, and systems. Year 3, year 25-26, we're going to move into developing grades 6 through 12 English medium content blocks, holding roundtables, and then releasing them along with the sample daily and weekly schedules. And as we continue our work, we realize there are additional guidance documents that we might need to create. So again, we have possible guiding documents, other guiding documents that we will develop for families, assessments, and systems. So you'll see that everything that Nancy spoke about earlier is all relative and is all within our literacy roadmap. And you'll see that within all of our phases, we have ongoing and continuous consultation with our team, with our partners, and from our experts and practitioners across California, which we hope includes you. Everything that we are developing is framed around the framework. It's framed in the framework, I mean also the 5 themes. It's also framed around evidence-based instruction, universal design for learning, multi-tiered systems of support, promoting multilingualism and multiliteracy, which includes dual language immersion. We want to support the whole child and family. We want to frame this around comprehensive assessment systems, which you will also see that if you go back to our 8th session, we talked a lot about assessment systems. So another great reference point. And also implementation systems, which Nancy just went over, and she also gave really good resources. As we develop the literacy roadmap, we're going to have certain elements that are included in the guidance. And that first begins with California literacy policy, our standards, so the Common Core standards, our ELD standards, our ELA-ELD framework, the California Dyslexia Guidelines, our California English Learner Roadmap, and the California Practitioner's Guide for Educating English Learners with Disabilities, which also has a lot of good resources and information for working within multi-tiered systems of support. Our roadmap will also have grade level resources, which I mentioned about earlier. So we're going to have content blocks for English medium and for multilingual settings, and daily and weekly schedules that make connections across content areas, because literacy isn't just in the ELA. We're reading and we're writing all the time. So making those connections and making them very explicitly. What we have on our content blocks, the components that you'll see, and I'm going to share a sample with you in a bit, but you'll see that the components include foundational skills with integrated ELD, integrated reading and writing with integrated ELD, intervention with integrated ELD, extension with integrated ELD, and designated ELD. Within foundational skills, you'll most specifically see that we've broken that down by print concepts, phonological, phonemic awareness, phonics, word recognition, decoding, which is decoding and encoding, also text reading fluency. For reading and writing, we have comprehension of literary and informational text. So looking at vocabulary and language structures, and composition for opinion, informative, and narrative papers, writing in response to text, process and project writing, language and conventions also included for comprehension. I know these are really small, but what you'll see here is we've had many iterations of the sample literacy, of our sample literacy content block, and we've so far have been looking at grade 1. So this is one of those iterations. It is not done. Just wanted to share with you what we've included so far. So you'll see here to the far left where we have framing questions for planning. So really giving teachers and educators and administrators and coaches an opportunity to look at what are some planning considerations. How can we use data and assessments and our students, what we know of our students' assets and their needs to drive our instruction, to move forward with and ensure that our students are learning. And then on the side here, the two left, to the right, you'll notice the content block with those components that I just spoke about earlier. So you'll see where the standards are integrated and where the themes from the framework are also integrated. We're also including appendixes that have more guidance, more specific guidance. Specifically, if you look to the two images on the right, you'll see the very specific that we are also working on including more specific strategies. So you have the what, and then this is the how, the strategies, the instructional practices to help teachers within those particular areas. And again, you'll see all of those components, the standards, universal design for learning, multi-tiered systems of support, using our students, what we know from our assessments to, again, drive forward our instruction. We are also going to be including guidance and resources for comprehensive assessment systems, including summative and formative assessments. So that includes screeners, diagnostics, benchmarks, progress monitoring, mandated statewide assessments. Now I wanted to spend a quick couple seconds on the screener because we are going to be providing guidance around the screener. More to come though on that as the reading difficulties risk screener selection panel is currently diligently working on developing a list of approved screeners that that list will be by the end of December of this year, 2024, so that by June of 2025, all districts and their boards will have approved a screener or screeners that they will begin to implement by 25-26 for students at K1 and 2. So more to come on that. We will be developing more specific guidance as we get more information with that. We will also be providing more specific guidance and resources for system planning improvement, resources and supports, and for professional learning and coaching for our administrators, teachers, and specialists, our expanded learning programs, as well as our parents, our families, our communities. And so that takes us to the final pause and reflect today. So I ask, we've we are hungry for input on the literacy roadmap and what we're putting together. And this would be a great time on the Padlet for you to include anything that might resonate with you, anything that you think you need to know, that others should know, that we need to know, any other questions you might have. And if you can, like or comment on other people's posts. I'm just going to bring that up, make sure that I have the Padlet here. I'm going to put it in the chat again. I'll bring that up. And again, we are hungry. We're thirsty for feedback. So please, if you have a moment to let us know what you think of what we've developed so far, of our plan, how you see it maybe being used within your setting, that would be great. And we would really, really appreciate that. I'm going to bring up my slide here. And as you do that, I think we are going to be able to end a little early today, gift of time. So we're going to give you folks a few more minutes to write in your comments, your reflection before we close out. And with that, actually, what I'm going to ask before we close out is if Director Brenelson, if Dr. Yop, or Dr. Spiescher, if you have any reflections regarding the comments and posts that we've received so far. I'm going to refresh it here. Thank you for the additional comments. I like this. Excited about comparing our PD plan to the snapshots.
Yes, I appreciated that comment because a lot of people have not yet really taken a deep dive into Chapter 11. And if we don't take a deep dive into the systems that are creating the conditions for effective instruction to take hold, then we're sort of missing a huge part of the equation. So I appreciate that comment. Please do check out that Chapter 11 and yeah, just kind of think about how it compares to what you're currently doing and where you might want to be going.
And I hope it's also an opportunity to reflect on your own circumstances, what your district is doing, what your county is doing, what your grade level team is doing, and how are you, besides this wonderful, skillful teaching, hopefully that's going on, how is the broader system supporting students? What are we doing as a larger system that can help propel all kids forward? So thanks for being here today, this topic.
And it's great that these sessions from our webinar series are resurfacing all the great guidance that the framework provides. And, I know the guiding documents have been really helpful. I've heard from out in the field that they've helped guide professional learnings. Some professors are actually using them for their own instruction. So it's great that they're being utilized, and just thank you for that.
And I see the comment about how it'll make its way into teacher prep programs. And what you need to know is people in teacher prep programs are involved in this process and are deeply dedicated to having the best for kids in the state of California. What's nice is that we do know that we have participants online with us today and throughout all of the past webinars that work in higher ed, and that I'm in higher ed. So yes, it takes all players. It cannot just be teachers. It can't just be administrators. It can't just be counties. It can't just be higher ed. We all have to be working together. I also appreciated someone else on the Q&A calling attention to the fact that preschool is included in this. Yes, this is fantastic. And we did that in the framework when we included transitional kindergarten, and in the digital learning document, we reached back into what was happening in preschools so that there was a beautiful flow. We're all part of one grand system to support the kids, and we're all still learning.
And I just wanted to add, and Nancy, you might want to jump in on this, but somebody was asking about TPE 7. So we now have new teaching performance expectations for our prospective teachers, teacher candidates that are firmly grounded in our ELA-LD framework, which is really exciting. So this systems alignment from teacher preparation through new teachers teaching, through leadership, through ongoing professional learning. It's very, very exciting. And Nancy, I know you've been really involved in that process. I don't know if you want to comment.
Yes, I have been. And in addition to the new teaching performance expectations, which, as Pam said, is what candidates are held accountable for, there is a new literacy program standard that every teacher preparation program in the state is required to address in their coursework, field placements, etc. And in fact, the Commission on Teacher Credentialing is going through a process right now, engaging programs in a certification process around this new literacy standard. All of it with the aim of moving away from what was the RICA, the Reading Instruction Competence Assessment, into a new literacy performance assessment that becomes effective July 1 of 2025. So there's a lot of work going on, a lot of change in the area of teacher preparation, just as we've seen a resurgence of work at the TK-12 level for grant programs and new guidance coming forward. So really, this literacy roadmap is intended to help us all make sense of it as a package, to provide particular guidance to classroom teachers. Our state board president is very clear that the guidance and the literacy content blocks will be interested as those develop on your feedback about how they can speak to teachers and do help and support teachers in the classroom. So we're having a moment in the sun, which a few years ago I would have said, gee, everything's about math and science. Not that I don't love those, but now literacy is really front and center, and we are making sure, or hoping to make sure, that all the themes of the framework are really rigorously and comprehensively taught and instituted across the system. There are so many resources out there, it would be really easy to be overwhelmed. And I think that's this whole, what everyone has said about partnering together and all of us collaborating to sort of take a chunk at a time and work on the systems for getting it all done. And hopefully some of the guidance around planning and system improvement will be useful to you as you start that enterprise.
Nancy, one of the questions on the Padlet, and Bonnie, maybe one of you two could answer, will CDE or COEs be providing professional learning for LEAs on the literacy roadmap and its implementation?
Well, right now we're in trying to get it developed. But we are really excited about opportunities to disseminate it and to do professional learning and engage. What are the possibilities, Bonnie?
What are the possibilities? And I appreciate that question. And it's come up a couple of times already where there's an ask for an information video, for example, on how do we use the literacy roadmap? How do we use the literacy content blocks? Almost a guiding video for a coach, for a teacher. So those are some of the ideas that we've been kicking around. We haven't come to any solid decision, but we appreciate that this does keep coming up, because then that means that we will be providing something around that, understanding that it's a need for the field.
And I'm seeing that somebody has a question about where the updated PTKLF fit into this literacy roadmap. So if people are wondering what all those letters stand for, it's the new preschool and transitional kindergarten learning foundations, which are for children ages 3 and 4, PK, and 4 and 5, TK. And they're really excited. Before Nancy and Bonnie jump in, I'm just so excited about our new PTKLF because they're completely aligned with our ELA and ELD standards and ELA-ELD framework. And we also have coming, or CDE also has coming, new preschool through 3rd grade learning progressions document, which is going to be really helpful for all that P3 alignment that you all are working really hard to achieve. So I'll just kick it back to you, Nancy and Bonnie, to elaborate.
Well, we definitely want to address TK, pre-K in our roadmap work. And we need to explore ways that we may do that. But as Pam said, the new learning foundations are going to be a huge step forward in that, and the PK3 learning progressions. So stay tuned for more on that. So Bonnie.
Yes, more to come. And as promised, a little gift of time. It is 4:31. We're going to go ahead and close out, discuss next steps. Again, everything that we do is guided by California literacy policy and guidance, specifically our ELA, ELD framework, and our 5 themes that Nancy went over earlier. We encourage you to give us feedback. This won't be the last webinar session you see from us. There will be more to come next year. And so let us know how this worked for you. What else would be helpful for another webinar series we have in the future? And finally, ending with our information. Again, we are going to have opportunities for more input from the field, and we are hungry for that input from our experts and from our practitioners, our teachers in the field. So if you could email us, if you want to call us, let us know that you're interested. We'll put you on a list, and we'll make sure that we invite you to our upcoming events. And with that, we thank you for spending another afternoon with us. It's been 9 months. Can you believe it? 9 months, this journey. And we just appreciate you coming along the ride with us. And with that, I'm going to say thank you and goodbye, and allow Dr. Yap, Director Brennelson, Dr. Spiescher, I don't know if you'd like to say anything, but.
Just the same thing. Thank you. Thank you for all the work you do on behalf of children in our communities. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, and I want to echo that. We see you. We get to go out there and see what you're doing, and it is so exciting to see just all of the innovations that you're coming up with, your passion, your dedication, and we just thank you. We know it's not easy. This is a challenging job we're all doing together, and thank you for doing it as a community, a statewide community.
Thank you. I echo everything that my colleagues have said. Appreciate your time. We appreciate your support, and we always welcome your feedback.
Thank you, and you have a great evening.